火種をまいた。失礼します。たやすいことです。
Today we need to talk about Shen. No, not with Shen. No, Shen. No, 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 not that one. Certainly not that one. No, no. Ah, wait. Come back. There. Chen. But before we talk about her impact in the future, we need to understand her current kit. So let's dive right in. First talent, piercing shape and perceiving intent. Bonus to attack, attack speed, and attacks become weakness damage. We'll see how impactful that is later, but the idea behind weakness damage is basically you check whether physical or arts damage is the best and deal just that. So if you have an enemy with very high res and no defense, then your attacks will deal physical damage, and vice versa. Her second talent, Percepting Art Unwavered by Surroundings, when not taking damage will only heal a certain amount of HP every 7 seconds. Dodging is the next physical arts attack. It's pretty good, it gives her a bit of sustain, mostly out of combat, so it's not always going to be relevant, but having a guaranteed physical or arts dodge depending on circumstances can certainly be useful. So far, the weakness damage is what is the most unusual about her kit, but let's keep going. Next up, we have Skill 1. Skill 1 is just a basic attack buff, an attack that turns into a double strike, and some silence effect. Nothing too special. It's not like it's a bad ability, it's still very decent, but it's ultimately just Skill 1 and not what makes it special. Skill 2 is a throwback to her original Chen form with all the slashes. So it's also pretty good, but it's not what makes her too special. Apart, I guess, from the ability to move at the end of a skill. It's pretty flashy, but yeah, it's not going to be as useful as you always think it is. That said, it's still a good skill, especially if you're trying to burst down targets. But there is one obvious issue. Skill 3 exists. Now, I could go over the part where you have the usual attack range expands, attack exceeds foreground targets, blah 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 blah. It's the usual get a lot of damage kind of skill. The interesting part is actually the first half. The shockwave in question, that resembles a dragon, deals 6% of the target's current HP. And it also deals a minimum of arts damage equal to percent of chance attack. You finally 80% at mastery 3, but we need to understand how the shockwave functions. So let's dive right in. The way the shockwave behaves is that it goes in a straight line until it meets an obstacle. What counts as an obstacle is basically any outground tile or any incursion point, so the red boxes count as one. The blue boxes will similarly block the path of the dragon. Anytime it actually encounters one of these obstacles, it turns clockwise, like a dog endlessly chasing its own tail, but always in the same direction. Which means that suddenly we are dependent on the layout of the map to make the most out of his skill. Or are we? As it turns out, our ground tile includes also the tiles placed by the player, which, as of today, there are mainly 2 tiles that are concerned with it. Nasty, for example as a skill that can deploy the range tile, as well as you might expect, reclamation algorithm. Keep that in mind for later. And with this, it's time that we talk about the collision mechanic. Basically, the dragon has a speed of 1.5 tiles per second, assuming you are playing at ×1 speed, and it has a collision size with terrain of 0.25 tile. That means that in practice, it doesn't have to go through the entire length of each and every single tile. And it's especially significant when there's only a 1x1 kill box, because in that case, the dragon will be able to turn very, very frequently. The important aspect, again, is that it only deals damage once for each time before it turns. So if you want a dragon to deal damage many times, you need to make it bounce on every single corner possible while being within an enemy's range. Let's expand it a little bit and jump to 2x2 tiles. The length that the dragon has to travel every time before turning is 1.5 tiles. And the dragon has a speed of 1.5 tiles per second, which means that because there's 30 ticks within a single second, it should take exactly 30 ticks to travel from one corner to the next. So 1 second before turning every single time, right? That's very simple in theory. In practice, however, this is not how it works. Why? Because screw you, that's why. For some crazy damn reason, there is always between 0 and 2 ticks added to the length of any edge, no matter the length of the tile. So if you think you're going to travel something in 50 ticks, nope, it might actually be 50, 51 or 52 at random, if the game feels like it and decides to screw you over or not. Is there any kind of consistency to it? No, I've tried plenty of different tiles and setups, and literally only one time was it actually consistent. And it turns out it was the 1x1 kill box, which is luckily the one we are the most interested in. But this is infuriating because it means that we need to calculate both a lower pessimistic and a higher optimistic bound for how many hits we are supposed to do with our dragon. Thank you, Hypergriff. Goodness gracious. As for why exactly it's happening, I just have no idea. This might be tied to like a rounding issue or how the dragon behaves when approaching a corner, but in reality there is basically no way to check unless you can verify the source code itself, so I'm not going to bother with this. Just keep this oddity in mind. If you want the more detailed explanation, you can just check the link to the spreadsheet at the bottom of the video. This is going to be in the very last tab. Although, let's be honest for a second, I know that people will start screaming if we talk about math, so here's the simplified version for you to understand. The most obvious thing you can notice is that really the variance only has much impact when it comes to 1x1 kill box, but also for some reason it was the one that happened to be the most consistent within different tests. So luckily most of the time you should still be hitting near the maximum hit count rather than a minimum, which is always good. At least for the 1x1 kill box. As for the other one, Grace Bearer save you, because I can't do anything about it. And now we come down to the funny part, the damage calculation. I've got a bunch of numbers, but don't worry, I'll make it simple for you. So, well, just to make a very simple scenario, we'll have an enemy with 100,000 HP, which is exactly as much as a Bishop Quintus, who is a boss. Okay, it's a fairly old boss, but whatever. And no base res. Ultimately, res doesn't really matter. You can just debuff it, just bring it rate or something. Now, each hit by the dragon, we are going to exclude every other source of damage, will remove 6% of the enemy's current HP. So, if we make a 1x1 kill box next to Bishop Quintus and we assume he has no res remaining, he starts with this much HP. Then he takes 1 hit and loses 6% of it, which means he takes 6000 flat damage. And then each subsequent hit will deal less and less as his HP diminishes. So, what do you think happens after 62 hits, which is the most you can get from a 1x1 kill box? Well, let's scroll down a little bit. Our dear Bishop Quintus will be left with, oh, is that 2.1% HP? Yes, our dear Bishop will be left with barely more than 2000 HP. As a reminder, he started with 100,000, which is quite tanky, let's say. So, wait a second, because it doesn't really matter how much starting HP the bishop in question has, or any enemy for that matter, if they have no resistance, that means that their HP will be dropped by 98% regardless of their initial amount. Okay, hold on a second. Does that mean that Hypergriff just decided to introduce an operator who can, in a single skill and 20 seconds, reduce an enemy's HP, in an AoE, mind you, by almost 98%? Yes, yes it did, and that has some very interesting consequences. Now, here's a small table with the reminder as to how many hits are possible. For the sake of simplicity, we're just gonna stick to 62 because it's quite reliable. So if our enemy starts with 1000 HP, this is more for RA CC, but it's just to give you a small appreciation of what exactly the skill means. So if you can reduce an enemy's HP by 98%, roughly, in a single skill use, that means that if an enemy has 4.6 million HP, a single skill use will drop it to 100,000 HP. And then an enemy with a 214 million HP, which by the way is not even close to the maximum we found in RACC so many days in, because that one would literally require day 101,722, then only then would you require 2 skill use from Chen, which is 40 seconds plus the time required to recharge a skill, which doesn't matter in an environment like RACC. And yeah, you can see that the numbers start making any kind of sense. So if you ever get to the point where Chen needs to use 10 skill use to bring back the enemy's HP to a reasonable level, that means that you're dealing with enemies with so that's thousands, millions, billions, trillion, quadrillions, quintillion, sextillion. Wait, it's not big enough at one moment. So that would mean that if you need to use 10 skill use from Chen to actually kill an enemy, you're dealing with an enemy that has 4.5 sextillion HP. If we ever get to that point, I feel sorry for all of us, because holy moly, the game will no longer be stable. We are no longer on Earth at this point. We are no longer on Terra. We are somewhere else. We are in the grand cosmos, fighting supernovas on a regular basis. We are throwing black holes at each other, and this is just another Monday for us. This is basically the reason why I would consider Gen 3 to be QB 2.0 on freaking steroids, but that should give you a small appreciation as to how strong she is. With all that covered, we can talk about what this channel is about after all. I mostly play RACC. This is Arafic on day 129, a video that's not mine, and I apologize for the low quality. This particular Arafic has 2 million HP and almost got obliterated in a single skill use by Chen, which is as expected and shows that it's just not completely theoretical math, it's simply what happens also in practice. And that's kind of the part that is worthy of mention. It doesn't matter how tanky the enemies are, because they will ultimately fall to Chen within 1 to 2 skill use, even in the absolute worst case scenario. But entropy, I say, it's not really realistic. We're talking about reclamation algorithm and who plays array. Well, besides me and maybe like 5 other people on Earth who are actually going to play RA CC for an endless duration, okay, that is a fair criticism. Except Nasty exists, and Nasty is basically bringing your reclamation algorithm elsewhere. You can create your kill boxes basically anywhere. And that's also a point. You don't need to land 62 hits on enemy to deal very significant damage. Even after just 12 hits, in the case of an enemy with no resistance, keep in mind that while you might argue that some enemies have some res, you can also multiply the damage. It is arts damage after all. You can amplify with Saria, Suzerain, Read Alter, and any kind of fragile effect, arts fragility, and the like. This is just the beginning, and just 12 hits is enough to drop an enemy from full to less than 50% of their HP, not even accounting for anything else. So you don't even need to land that many hits in the first place to already start doing some tremendous damage. It's also not just relevant in RA CC because, as it turns out, if you're playing at very high difficulty levels, you will soon end up with enemies who themselves already have millions upon millions of HP. Heck, on global, we even just got the ending 4 for IS6, which features the Bestial who has a starting HP of 1 million. This is before any kind of multiplier, and as soon as Ascension 18 gets released, this boss can get over 12 million HP. I don't need to tell you that being able to remove even just a 20 or 30% of that is already quite significant in actually helping you clear. It is insane how much damage it can do, and we are just getting started. Things cannot power creep Chen. Chen will always be able to keep up, which is a funny thing considering that most people will probably take a look at Chen's banner and consider that Wang is the better option. And I guess that's fair. It does depend on the kind of content you're looking for. As far as most people are concerned, they will never touch RA CC. In fact, even when it comes to Ascension 15 IS4, when official stats got released, less than 2% of the player base ever managed to clear Ascension, even a single ending of Ascension 15 in IS4, which really says a lot. Chen is, simply put, the most overpowered damage dealers that we ever had in the game. But ironically, she's also an option that has a fairly low floor but an infinite ceiling. She is more effort than most people would like to bother with. For your daily content, you're never gonna encounter enemies with millions upon millions upon millions of HP, and an operator like Wang, or really Wisdel, or Arts Wisdel, or any of that matter, is going to be the better option for most people, because you just need to either point a click or just activate a skill. You don't have to think about the layout of the map, or you don't need to pre-plan the dragon, its orientation, its direction, where it's going to bounce, how many hits you're going to take from the boss. This is way beyond what most people would bother with. So yeah, as a result, most people will probably not care about Chen. Yet she is effectively a second QB. And by now you would think that Hyperglyph would have learned their lesson with QB, that you should not make an operator that scales based on the enemy's stats. But now that Chen has been released, the cat is out of the bag. One last closing note regarding Chen S3 is that she still has a talent for weakness damage. Said talent, as mentioned before, will deal either physical or arts damage based on the enemy def or res, and will pick the highest of the two values. The dragon from skill 3 deals force arts damage as far as I'm concerned. From the testing I've done, I could not possibly get a run number to pop up while bringing some physical susceptibility debuff. This might be a fault on my part, but until someone proves otherwise, you should consider that the dragon can only deal arts damage. Another point related to RA CC specifically, and well, I guess reclamation on the Gurfum, is that if you get a corrosion debuff, it's considered physical damage, which means that her other talent, which allows her to dodge the next art of physical attack, can actually work against it. That's nice. Finally, one last concern, which is damage reflect. Usually it can be a problem because the Vain Guardians will always reflect a flat 200 odds damage, and obviously if you're going to be hitting like 20 of them at the same time, it's a bit of an issue, but if you actually pay attention to this clip right here, Blaze Altar is just casually throwing AoEs into a group of enemies with a bunch of Vain Guardians stacked against her. She should be taking thousands upon thousands of arts damage per second, but she survives just fine. This is because you actually still have ways to actually counter the damage reflect from the Vain Guardians. You have two ways to go about it. One is to use Lean S2, in which case she's going to share barrier with nearby operators. And when she does this, she will ensure that all the operators in question will take 0 damage. Because 200 arts damage is not enough to break the barrier, and so all your ops are free to fire at the enemies. The other alternative is what you see right here. I'm using Record Keeper, and Record Keeper S2 happens to basically be Opianus' talent, where it allows the ops in question to heal whenever they take damage. There are more restrictions around it, but the short of it is, assuming Record Keeper has a skill 2 at Mastery 3, and it gets his module at level 1, and the operator in question has at least 15 res, then they can survive throwing a bunch of AoEs against Vain Guardians and survive just fine. And yeah, guess how much res Chen Guard it starts with? That's right, 15. So yeah, even Vain Guardians will not stop her. And the fact that she also has the dodge to possibly not die to some random spider from the Rainbreaker exploding, for example, is just a cherry on top. Literally, I think if the devs wanted to make an operator specifically for RA CC, it would just be Chen free. Quite literally, it would just be her and no one else. One last comment for all the people who also feel extremely intimidated by something like RA CC or might have wondered whether it was worth taking a shot. I kinda see Chen free as being, let's say, a time save. While yes, she is undeniably insanely powerful, she ultimately will not allow you to actually survive in RA CC if you couldn't already survive. She's more of a time skip for the people who just don't want to spend 15 minutes bashing on the same boss just waiting for it to die, and as such, I would say she's definitely an accessibility feature for the people who are interested in giving RA CC a shot. As such, if you ever had doubts as to whether you want to give a try to RA CC, well, now that Chen Free is here, you can actually give it a shot yourself. You can actually try it. You can probably make it very far and still have the fights lasting a pretty short amount of time. Again, she will not allow you to clear the raids in the first place if you can't clear them without her. You will still need some forms of crowd control one way or another. You'll still need to pull back some foes, you will still need to have some carefully planned setups to make sure she doesn't die to damage reflect or Rainbreaker spiders or the like. But if there is any time to get started with RA CC, it's probably Chen Free's release. credit goes to Ciel and Mr. Gotcha for having some videos on Shenfree before I could collect any information myself. The link to the channels is in the description. And credits as well to Zitong for being your usual brainrot self and also sharing our account, which allowed for some of the testing that you saw in the video. I will see you another time.
Home, left her homeland miles behind. The hunter she walks on the seacoast way with a path before her. Crash, and the driftwood floats evermore. It's the salt on my skin, leaving their mark where the walls once towered. Oh, it's more than a dream. It's a play the tide's attending. Oh, our world comes apart at the seams. From the chaos, scared and afraid, I will wander. I will remain strong, but it sets with the sun. Hopeless, I'm chasing the dawn, and I wonder on. From the chaos, scared and afraid, I will wander. I will remain strong, but it sets with the sun. Hopeless, I'm chasing the dawn.